Hello and welcome to Transfermarkt TV. My name is Stefan Bienkowski. He's Manuel Veth, and today we are talking about Brenden Aaronson, the young American international who has had a pretty bumpy career to date. I'm sure Premier League fans will remember he made the move to Leeds United from Salzburg about this time last year for no less than 34 million euros, and 12 months later he's now off on loan to the German Bundesliga. Manu, let's start from scratch here. You followed Aaronson's career going all the way back to MLS when he was still a young lad. He is still a young lad, but even younger back then. You've even interviewed him a few times. You know him quite well. For people who aren't Leeds United fans, who aren't RB Salzburg fans, aren't MLS fans, why don't you kind of give us a brief rundown as to what kind of player he is, and perhaps, what kind of a person he is as well?
Yeah, first of all, he's a great person. And I think that does play a big role when you speak to people, when you look at their character. Brenden Aaronson's character is fantastic. In terms of what kind of player he is, I mean, when he was with the Philadelphia Union in MLS, he was often his nickname was the Medford Messi, right? And it's not just one Aronson, it's two. He's actually joining his brother Paxton in the Bundesliga, right? Paxton, of course, moved to Frankfurt last winter. The Aaronson legacy is big at Philadelphia Union, and because both those brothers came up through the academy system together. They were developed under Ernst Tanner's tutelage, who was of course a former executive at various Bundesliga clubs, and has since turned Philadelphia Union into a club that is one of the best academy clubs in Major League Soccer. And Aaronson came through that highly talented midfielder. And I think we have to talk about his midfield role in a moment. But, he's dynamic. He works really hard. He can join the attack, has a great shot, fantastic shot. Really, really, really hard-working player as well, but who can also be creative. So there's a lot there to like in terms of his abilities. I think the one thing, and that is something that, we went through the statistics before we went on this video, is he hasn't really nailed down a position yet, Stefan.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, the kind of thing hanging over his head or his neck, whatever metaphor you want to use, is of course that really quite ludicrous move to Leeds United, which probably fair to say was largely fueled by head coach at the time, Jesse Marsch, probably pushing through the move. He was obviously a very young, very exciting young talent in US soccer, and it hasn't quite worked out. If you kind of look at his numbers and where he played for Leeds United, you can definitely see a young player there who maybe does struggle from being a jack of all trades, but maybe a master of none, in the sense that, you look at where he played for Salzburg, which is more of a kind of central mid, but also on the left-hand side, where at Leeds he kind of plays as an attacking mid, but also on the right-hand side, as you said, he's similar deal with the US men's national team. And, this often happens in football, but one head coach puts a lot of stock in a player. They spend a lot of money on them. Things don't quite work out for him. He only got one goal out of about 40 appearances for Leeds last season. 3 assists, I think, if I'm not mistaken. But by the time Jesse Marsch has moved on and Garcia or Sam Allardyce have kind of taken on the reins, they're obviously up against it. They have to get results. They probably turn to more proven talent in that squad, or players who have more experience in that squad. And Aaronson kind of got pushed to the back of the queue. And the really interesting thing now is that, he's moving on loan to Union Berlin, which on the one hand could be seen as just a very simple case of, a player or a club moving a player on to get some match experience, to get some game time, to continue developing. But because of the manner in which these head coaches have kind of shifted at Leeds United, and of course another one coming in this summer, you wonder if Aaronson has very quickly just kind of moved off of the plans entirely, and this kind of loan move to Union Berlin is actually just a case of saying, well, let's just see what happens. We'll pick this back up in 12 months' time. By which point, Aaronson may decide that, hey, you know what? I kind of want to just stay in the Bundesliga, because, Manu, as we know, Union Berlin can be a very good club for young players to develop.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, he's working with a head coach in Urs Fischer, who has a very clear and structured idea of how football is supposed to be played. And it's different than what most clubs in Germany play, right? They play a anti-gegenpressing in many ways. which is the gegenpressing is of course the preferred method of football in the Bundesliga, but they play almost an anti-gegenpressing in that they sit very deep, and they're much more defensively structured than many other clubs in the Bundesliga. Of course, they're in the Champions League now, right? And they need more depth in their squad. And I'm really curious to see how Urs Fischer is going to use Brenden Aaronson. And when I wrote my article for Transfermarkt, I kind of went through some ideas here. Of course, he can play on the right, he can play on the left. Urs Fischer uses a 3-5-2 system. But one thing that I've also kind of thought about here, it kind of reminds me a little bit of Bastian Schweinsteiger and his inability to really nail down a position early on in his career. Until he was moved into a almost number 8 role or number 6 role, right? While Louis van Gaal and of course Joachim Löw copied that for the German national team. And I always wonder if Brenden Aaronson, and you see it at times with US men's national team already, if he would be better suited to actually play in that more central role, almost be converted into a box-to-box type midfielder who can join the rush, can play in the transition game, be in that 3 or 5 man midfield, be in that center of it, and play next to someone like Rani Khedira and be that dynamic part at Union Berlin. I think that might actually be where Union Berlin see him, and why they brought him in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you could definitely see him playing as one of those perhaps kind of wing backs on either wing if necessary. But of course, he can also play as a kind of box-to-box player, can't he? And I think the whole kind of point of Fischer's system at Union Berlin is that they try to make sure that their players don't pick up too much game time. Not they don't pick up too much game time. They don't pick up too much game time is what I'm trying to say there. In the sense that they try to kind of even out the minutes on the legs, and players aren't feeling heavy by the end of the season. And of course, you have to remember that Union are going into a Champions League next year, where not only will they be up against really impressive teams who will force them to play defensively on the counter attack, which a player like Aaronson might actually suit really well in one of those roles we talked about, whether that be as a kind of wingback or a box-to-box kind of facilitator. But it will also mean that Union are having to juggle their squad a lot more than they're used to. So I don't think there's any doubt that he's going to get a lot of game time at Union next season, but it'll be really interesting to see if he can pick up, if he can pick up a kind of education as well along the way, and maybe kind of forge what kind of position he wants to play in. But I guess, Mario, just to kind of wrap things up, we should maybe kind of quickly touch on his national team and say, for people who maybe don't follow US men's national team, how important is Aaronson to that team, and how vital is it that he makes this move work? Because if he can't impress Fischer and he ends up spending the season on the bench at Union Berlin, that's one of the US men's national team's most promising young players kind of fizzling out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, this move has to work, and there's no guarantee that it does, because, as you mentioned, Union Berlin doesn't like to spread the load. They have to, because it's one of the most difficult systems to play in German football, maybe European football, and they make it work for a long way, right? They finished top 4 in the Bundesliga. They reached the later stages of the Europa League last year. So Urs Fischer demands a lot of his players, and if they don't manage those demands, you get dropped and you don't play. And the US men's national team has depth in that role as well. So yes, this needs to work for Brenden Aaronson, and that, I think, will be the storyline going into this season. And I think there needs to be also a bit of patience, right? It's not like Brenden Aaronson, who we have as the most valuable player on that Union Berlin side, is going to walk into a team that didn't have success. They had a lot of success, and so he will have to hit the ground running.
Yeah, absolutely. So as always, make sure you keep tabs on Aaronson and his season at Union Berlin on Transfermarkt, where you can find out all his stats from week to week, the match reports, and of course any transfer rumours that might bubble up if he does actually do well at Union as well. And let us know what you guys think. If you're a fan of the US men's national team, if you're sitting in the United States wondering what's going on with him, let us know what you think of his career to date. And of course, until next time, we'll speak to you soon.